So finally, Qing dynasty, you have four great masters, but they all became monk. So you sometimes say great monk masters or four great eccentric painters of Qing. And all four of them, again, they are not closely related to each other, but they all share the common sentiment. They mourn. Do you know this word, mourning? Expressing grief. Yes, they are grieving. They feel so sad, right? What are they sorry for? The fall of the Ming dynasty, right? And then they feel humiliated because they are living in this Manchu rule. Yeah. So if you go to Bada Shanlen's work, he is the last two. So Hong Len and Kun Kan, you can look it up if you want. But we will focus on Bada, Shanlen, and Shi Tao. So why these names are long and or like once, like a single name? Because these are their monk name. They didn't use their family name plus given name system. So you will see. So Badashan, this is his self-portrait. He depicted himself like this. And then he is really eccentric. He used a lot of, how can I say, wet brush. And instead of making that calligraphic line, he refused to use calligraphic line. Instead, he used that, like, larger part of a brush, right, dipped into the ink. And then that, deep saturated ink makes smudges. So that's interesting case. Also a little bit minimalist. It's wide empty right here. You only see some lines, but then you recognize that, oh, so these are lotus stems and lotus flowers are here, but it's radically cracked, right? It does not show the entire floral petals. Over here, he painted a big melon, a sort of melon type, and because they are well ripe, they are big and a little bit soft edges, right? And he also painted, a lot of my students say that fish flying in the air because you don't see any connotations of the water, right? You can just imagine that these are the cliff and then maybe this is the water, but in the end, fish look very uncomfortable and sad because they are not comfortably inside the water, right? So he is really, really eccentric. And this is, if you see very well, this is his name. Ba Da Shan. That's his name. His this one, 8, and then large, and then Shan, mountain, and then person. He's like a pen name. And another version of lotus. So he became voluntarily Buddhist monk. I want you to take a look at this. In the historical background, what did I talk about dress code in Qing dynasty? Remember Qing dynasty? Manchu rulers, they learned the lesson from Mongols or even before the Northern Wei nomadic tribes. Once they move into mainland China, these nomadic tribes, they lose their identity, nomadic identity. So Qing emperors imposed that Manchu identity or Manchu dress code on the entire other citizens. Remember? So if you want to work as a merchant or government officials or any other decent gentleman in Qing dynasty, what would be your appearance like? Yes, you have to shave your forehead, you have to have a long queue, right? The braided long hair. You cannot wear this kind of big drapery fold. You have to adopt the Manchu style robe, right? So becoming a Buddhist monk or becoming a Taoist monk was a good excuse to escape that dress code. If you are a religious member, you are not going to be asked to dress like a Manchu. So this is Bada Shanran's identity as a loyal Han subject or Han citizen. Bada Shanran himself was a member of imperial family. His last name is Zhu, so he was the descendant of the Prince Yang of Ming Dynasty. And he saw the fall of Ming Dynasty during his lifetime, and it was when he was 18 years old. His hope of restoring Ming was shattered. It didn't work that way. So he got so afraid, he left Beijing, and he was wandering around the southern part, and then he lived like a monk. And Shi Tao, as I mentioned earlier, this painting is in your final exam. So this is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and you can read more about it at the link. If Shi Tao used a lot of black painting in an eccentric style, Shi Tao intentionally painted more like a Tang Yin or Chiu Yin style, old-fashioned, colorful painting. These are all painted on paper, but he used a lot of colorful ink, and then created an eccentric like a landscape. This is again Shi Tao's own handwriting. And the house in a man in a house beneath a cliff. I mean, the title itself is really suffocating, isn't it? Can you build a house beneath a cliff? Why you don't build a house on top of a cliff? Remember Shenzhou? Like a Shenzhou, he walked this path, passages, and then he went to a cliff above the cloud. Why wouldn't he do that? So a lot of people interpret Shi Tao as a painter of psychological impact or psychological conditions. So this is how he feels, suffocating, and cannot go outside, cannot even move, as if the house is built in between these rocky cliffs. He himself is lost because the current world that he's living in is corrupt. That's how he felt. It's corrupt. And it's like a Manchu's world. That's what he thought. If you see this, the brush strokes are really interesting. It's dark, but it's not like a ink smudges as we've seen in Bada Shanren. It's calligraphic in a way, but it's not really descriptive. So totally unique. So in Qing Dynasty, many artists wanted to create their own eccentric or unique styles. So what do you think of this man seated inside a house? A lot of critics commented that the man seated in this suffocating and isolated house may be Shi Tao himself. This is Shi Tao's own self-portraiture. So he was also a member of imperial family. His original name was Zhu Ruoji. And this is his own image. So in order to avoid the Manchu style dress code, which he thought quite humiliating, he dressed himself as a old-fashioned monk with a walking stick, and then shaved the head because he's a Buddhist monk. Then he is seated in the middle of the mountain. And look at his ages. He didn't live that long, like 65 years. He died in despair, right? The Ming Dynasty never restored. So that is the end of today's lecture. So let me stop sharing. So I hope you enjoyed that eccentric painters of Qing Dynasty. And then the latter part of Qing Dynasty, say late 19th and early 20th century, will be discussed in Unit 7 when we study modern and contemporary art of East Asia.